you could see how a third OS competitor would have difficulty gaining users upon launch. But there's another factor here. Apple's app suite, like iMessages, FaceTime, Calendar, Notes, that's all very popular. It can only be used on an Apple device. Google's app suite, Gmail, Google Calendar, YouTube, is also very, very popular, and you can only use it if you sign to the Open Handset Alliance and agree to use Android. I've praised the Alliance for their forward-thinking policies in the past, but in some degrees, they are also holding the industry back. Okay, so imagine you try to create a third OS. You are automatically not allowed to use any apps made by Apple or Google, so you've pretty much lost out on like 98% of people who use phones. So in order to succeed, you would need to spend a whole bunch of time and capital to develop apps that are so much better than the competition that it forces users to come over. Or, if you're lucky enough, you're a huge company that already has some of these apps. An established user base does lower the risk a little bit. Not to mention that you would need to develop the hardware. So you need to be a company that's good at software and hardware, or you need to just invent all that from scratch. Easier said than done. The typical way to go is to partner with another company to help you make hardware or perhaps software. But the thing is, all the good companies are signed to the Open Handset Alliance, so you're kind of out of options. So in order to succeed, you need a few things. You need 1, a good app ecosystem, and 2, great hardware. Both things that are incredibly hard to get. And these two things don't just have to be comparable to the competition, they have to actually be better. You have to beat 20 years of innovation just to get over new users, because these existing companies have a built-in user base. Okay, so we've proven why it's super difficult to topple these giants. Let's talk about the people who have tried. Okay, so this is not an exhaustive list. If it was, we'd be here all day. These are just all of the ones that I found probably had a good chance of overthrowing the top 2, or at least were interesting enough to mention. Around the dawn of smartphones, one of the most popular alternatives was BlackBerry. They were almost seen as more serious and capable versions of the smartphone, and BlackBerry could have had a chance to cement themselves as the third business-focused competitor, but they fumbled in a couple of ways. I covered the behind the scenes in my dedicated BlackBerry video, but one of the things that they did wrong is they attempted to make a decent smartphone competitor and completely failed. Originally, they attempted to get their devices to run on BlackBerry OS, which was their old OS, but in 2013 they upgraded to BlackBerry 10, which was a complete overhaul of the system. It was a much more direct competitor to Android and iOS, with many of the equivalent apps, but they had wasted their opportunity at this point. After churning out crappy smartphones for a few years, the original BlackBerry fans didn't like the new direction, and many moved to iOS or Android. BlackBerry tried to get them back with a fresh line of smartphones called the Key line, which blended smartphones and the old BlackBerry design. These are actually really cool devices. The thing is, it runs Android, which means that they failed at their attempt to cement a third OS. Ultimately, they were unable to match the market trends, and in trying, they lost the unique factor that they possessed. Okay, so BlackBerry's out of the game. At this point, all the other old giants from the 2000s, like Motorola or Sony Ericsson, they've either died out or they've started making Android phones. So that only leaves a few options. Hope for a third competitive OS in the scene, unfortunately, lies with large corporations. So, what sort of companies are big enough to compete with Apple and Google? How about Amazon? They own Amazon Cloud Services, music, video streaming, a shopping platform, and they even produce tablets already, so hardware wouldn't be that much of a stretch. So they launched the Amazon Fire Phone, which was just a really weird device. Using a heavily skinned version of Android called Fire OS, the device was a weird proposition that you can learn all about in my dedicated video. Basically, the TLDR is that it had no access to Google Apps or any apps at all, just a few ones provided by Amazon. All the Amazon apps were available on iOS or Android, so what's the point? You were giving everything up for no gain. So, the weird 3D hologram phone from Amazon failed after the first model. It's a weird phone. Sorry, I don't have time to get into it. Okay, so let's look at another big tech company that could try it. I know, what about Microsoft? They had the most popular phone OS in the 2000s, so they know how to make a phone OS, supposedly. They have a whole suite of apps that everybody uses, Microsoft Office. They aren't super strong in the hardware department, but, they've made the Xbox. And they definitely have a lot of capital to invest in R&D. So they tried. Windows Mobile was a whole new take on mobile OS. Many people actually preferred it to the other competitors. Most importantly, the keyboard was by far the nicest keyboard on any touchscreen device. I'm not smart enough to explain it, but it just feels really good. It was a fan favorite for sure. Just take a look at the comments on my dedicated video. Windows Mobile had a cult following. They managed to get the OS into flagship devices like the HTC One M8, which was one of the best-selling phones that year. And when that didn't work, they straight up bought Nokia. Their hardware under Nokia was super sleek and stylish with this super popular design. But, yet again, there was just one flaw. Google apps were missing. I mean, think about it. Why would Google just hand over access to their apps to a new competitor? Microsoft Office was already on Android, so users just stayed. They really liked YouTube and Gmail. Microsoft really wanted this to work. They poured so much money into it that they would have had to outsell Apple for a few years in a row just to break even.